Hey, this is Albert from the Uncommon Legend Experience podcast. And today we have a guest, and I kind of wanted to come here and talk to you guys super quick before we get started in this episode. Today, our guest is Donna Bearden, and she's going to be joining us and talking a little bit about advocacy and what it means to do mission and what it means to serve on purpose with purpose and what that looks like down in the Dominican Republic. So, with that, I hope you enjoy this podcast and this episode. It's a little bit different vibe than what we're normally doing, but all in all, still the same, highlighting, just normal people living extraordinary lives, right? And just what that looks like to live in a way that is, outside of the norm, but really trying to make a difference in the places and spaces where you find yourself. So with that, I hope you're blessed by it and I hope you enjoy it. Yo, what's good? How's it going? Look, I'm glad you're here. My name is Albert Williams III, and welcome back to the Uncommon Legend Experience. And today we have a guest. We have our friend Donna from Big Hope Bearden Ministries. And we're going to talk and have a conversation here today. And Donna, just kind of tell everybody who you are and a little bit more about yourself.
Hey, Albert, thanks for having me on. My name is Donna Floyd Bearden. I'm Executive Director of Big Hope Bearden Ministries. We have a nonprofit Christian ministry that services people in the Dominican Republic. Right now, we're currently running a medical clinic there, and we accept medical and surgical teams to come in and work to help provide care for the people there.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. So I had the opportunity to meet Donna this past year. For those of you that know, I'm a campus minister. And so for me, I had an opportunity to bring some college students down to the Dominican Republic and get to go serve. And it was a really, really awesome and really neat experience where we got to be there. And a lot of times, you go on these mission trips and you go, well, I need to bring Jesus to them, right? And what we realize is that Jesus was already working, and we just got
Yes.
to be a part of it. And so a lot of times with mission trips, you can get caught up in, I have to do all this work, I have to do all the things. But I think one of the greatest things that we got to experience was just being present and doing the work that we were called to, and then just enjoying in our downtime, like all the other little things. So with that, you've already talked about your medical teams and medical missions. How did all that get started?
So in 1999, my husband and I, John, went down with Dr. Randy Smith from Pittman Park United Methodist Church to work after Hurricane George came and
Mm,
ravaged the island, more or less. And
mm,
people were um, really, really sick and very devastated by all of it. The homes were destroyed, the cattle
mm,
and all their livestock was gone. And so there was a lot of sickness that had run through because after they have hurricanes or tropical storms or stuff like that, they have a lot of flooding. And so you have a lot of mosquito development and, you
mm,
have all kinds of different things that happen after that, malaria and stuff like that. So we went down to help him. I'm a nurse by trade, and John is just, he says he's a workhorse, but he worked for the Department of Natural Resources for many years, and he's done a lot of humanitarian and a lot of emergency medical aid and disaster training. And so he went down to help out with logistics and things like that. And God just spoke to us when we were down there, and our lives have never been the same.
That's awesome. But with that, I know you guys lived there for a number of years. Could you kind of unpack that for us and what it was like to not only serve in the DR for a number of years, but to also live there? What was that like for you?
Yeah, so we knew the first year we were down there that God had called us there.
Mm,
John and I both knew it when we stepped into the Batey, which is a really poor village there. And we really struggled trying to get on the field for 12 years. We went in 1999. We didn't wind up on the field until 2010 or 2011.
right.
It was a difficult struggle trying to get on the field, but I believe that God was testing our obedience and perseverance to the calling that He had on our lives. I really truly believe that God does that a lot of times. And so,
Hmm.
in that 12 years of waiting, there was a preparation for what we would go through when we were on the field. And
Right.
so, in 2010, no, actually 2011, it was after the earthquake in Haiti. So in 2011, the bishop from the Dominican Republic asked us to come. We were originally working through the United Methodist Volunteers and Missions through the Methodist Church. We went as missionaries with them. And the bishop had called and asked us. The Iglesia Evangelica Dominicana Church is the Methodist branch of the church in the Dominican. And so he called and asked us to come and be missionaries that would be more like a connectional ministry. We would connect churches in the states to churches in the Dominican Republic that needed some type of assistance, either working on the church or I mean, there was just a variety of things they needed: medical care, surgical care,
Mm.
eyeglasses, just different things. And so we went down and just worked as a connectional ministry, bringing churches from the U.S. to the DR to meet the needs wherever the bishop saw a necessity.
Right. Yeah, and that's so awesome, to be able to do that, and you guys is like work there, and you also adopted two boys as well while you're down there,
Yes,
correct?
we did. One of our sons, Freddie, he actually was one of the reasons why we knew we were called there. The
Hmm.
first year we were there, we met him. I actually met him. He brought his grandmother into the clinic, and she was
Hmm.
very, very sick and blind, and she needed a lot of medical care. And he was 5 years old at the time, and he was determined he was going to get medical care for his grandmother. It didn't matter what.
Right.
And so he just stood there with his little determined way and was speaking Spanish to me. And of course, at that time, I couldn't speak any Spanish. But he came back around at lunch and he grabbed me by the hand and he took me around and he showed me how he was caring for his grandmother. And it just really touched my heart. And so every year when we would go back with mission teams, we went back constantly every year from 1999 until we went on the field, taking teams ourselves or either going with teams. And
Hmm.
every year we would go back, he would come and work with us. And he eventually started calling me mom. He has a mom that lives in the Batey as well, but she was not able to care for him. And so we financially supported him until we moved there. And he would call me mom. I don't know how many times I put him on the back of a motorcycle and he would be crying and I would be crying, and
Yeah.
he'd be waving as far as I could see his little hand wave as he was driving off. And he kept saying, Mom, one of these days when you move here, I'm going to come to live with you. And
Mhm.
so when we moved there, he came to live with us and we adopted him. So, and then we adopted another young man who just really, it's interesting because we lived on a camp that the Methodist Church owned down there, or
Mhm.
the Iglesia Evangelica Dominicana Church owned down there. And the second young man that we adopted, his dad is a pastor with the church, but he had gotten into some trouble and showed up down there to help out at the camp and really didn't have anybody to help take care of him. And so we just kind of took him under our wing and he became ours as well.
Right.
Um, I go back and I look at those times because we were down there for 5 years. They were some of the most wonderful years of my life. They were
Mhm.
some of the most difficult years of my life, but we all grew together as a family and we grew to love each other and work together for the glory of God. And these two young men have just been true testimonies to God's work in their life. And
Yeah. Yeah. And that's awesome. And I think, before I would be remiss to not like talk about this, could you explain the meaning behind Bate and kind of why it was so important to do that work there? Because there's a meaning behind Bate, and then two, the lack of like medical care and all those things. Kind of like talk about the disparity in those areas.
so the meaning of Bate, it means suffering, a place of
Mm.
suffering. And the Bates were started years ago when big, huge sugar corporations like Dixie Crystal and other sugar corporations went down and established massive sugarcane plantations on the island of Hispaniola, but on the Dominican side. The island of Hispaniola, the Dominican shares the island with Haiti, and it forms the island of Hispaniola. And so when they were there, they would bring Haitian people across into the Dominican, and they just made these slave camps, more or less, is what they were, for people to work for the sugarcane company. And they're just extremely, extremely poor places. I would dare to say, and my daughter would tell you this because she's done a lot of work in Africa, but she would tell you that the Bates are just as poor as places in Africa, and they are. There's usually no running water, no good electricity. People live in palm sided huts or palm tree sided huts with palm fronds tops on the houses. Now you will see more because of missionaries going in and teams going in and our teams going in. You will see more concrete houses or wooden houses with tin roofs now. Some of them
Mhm.
have, most of them have still have dirt floors. So when there's a lot of flooding down there, there's a lot of illness, a lot of disease, a lot of disparity. People don't. And right now we're seeing a lot of children that are malnourished because of the conflicts that are going on in Haiti, and they're trying to get to the Dominican Republic. And once they arrive there, they've come through really bad conditions. And so a lot of people are starving. And I don't know. God just spoke to my heart. I remember standing in the Batey the first year thinking, you know, it's just by God's grace that I was allowed to be born in the United States. And I could have been born here as well. God could have chosen to let me grow up in a batey as well, but He chose me to go and to help. And so I just feel very blessed that He chose me to go and help and very humbled by it. Never would have thought that He could have used me in that way, or
Mhm.
my husband, or my family for that matter, because we all do mission work. Even my sisters have been down with me to do mission work as well. Just very humbled by it. I tell people all the time, like, you're only a blessing if you let it flow through you. So I just truly believe that it's been a blessing to be able to be that person that God chose to go and to help and to serve and to connect people to have the same experience or similar experience and just experience their lives. That's what I was there for. And to you don't take God there. He's already there.
Right.
And they probably have witnessed to me more in my life than I've ever witnessed to them.
Yeah, so, and that's what I love about this, and I think when we went on this trip, and I tell students before any trip, whether it's a mission trip, whether it's a retreat, whether it's us going to Walmart, sometimes I will tell them this, if you allow it, expect Jesus, right?
Exactly.
Expect to
Exactly.
meet him in this place, and
Exactly.
if you are open to it, what might happen. And I think the openness of your family allowed that to really propel you into greater things. And with that, I know your family is all involved with this. I know your daughter does some work as well. Could you kind of
Right.
talk about this? It's the thing around like the arm circumference, correct? And kind of
Yeah.
like what that means for
Yeah.
like children's nutrition. Could you talk
So
about that
it's
more?
sure. So in December of last year, the clinic that we run in the Dominican, we've hired a doctor, we have a nurse, we have two pharmacy techs, we have a night guard, and a housekeeper that
Mm,
or a cleaner that cleans the clinic for us. And some of the people have been there for many years, but the
mm,
doctor is new. And so in December of last year, sent me a photo of a child that was a year old and he only weighed 10 pounds.
mm,
And she's like, Donna, he's starving to death and we've got to do something. And so we were able financially to send money down to help her get him to a hospital because some of the severely malnourished children, you cannot feed them. They have to have IV fluids and just there's protocols for that kind of treatment, but you can't just feed them outright. It will kill them.
mm,
So she assessed this and knew how desperate it was. So we were able to send financial assistance to get the child fed. And I just asked her, I was like, Glory, like, how many of these children are we seeing? And she's like, we're seeing a lot. And like, and that just, I have a granddaughter now, but I also have children of my own, and it just devastated with me. Like, no child should starve. No
right,
child should be starving with the resources that we have to be able to help people.
mm,
And so I started talking to my daughter, Maddie, who has a master's degree in public health, but she also has a focus in nutrition. And she does a lot of work in Africa. She grew up on the mission field with us when we were serving. Our oldest daughter also has a background. She's a nurse practitioner as well. And so we all started talking about it. We're like, something's got to be done. And Maddie's like, well, this can be done if we can get the ready to feed formula are ready to feed supplemental packets. And she's like, Mama, I can help you set up the program at the clinic if you'll just, see if we can find these food packets, at a price that we can afford. And
mm,
I just started praying about it. One day I just like, I'm going to look up on because we had looked several different places and most of it was overseas in France or somewhere in Europe and we could not purchase them. You could see
mhm,
what they used, but you couldn't purchase it. So
Right.
I thought there's got to be a place here in the United States that does the same thing.
Yeah.
And I got on the internet and I looked up and I found a place in Fitzgerald, Georgia.
Fitzgerald. Yeah.
It's called Manna, which is
Mhm.
crazy. It's a bunch of peanut farmers that grow peanuts and they make this nutritional supplement
Yeah.
and they send it all over the world. I mean, Samaritan's Purse uses it, UNICEF,
Mhm.
Feed My Children. I mean, you name it. And I thought, well, we're not Samaritan's Purse size or anyway, but I thought I'm just going to call and see if they might sell us in small quantities. And so when I called, the man said, Donna, like, how big of a truck do you need? And I was like, I don't need a truck. And he's like, well, how much do you need? And I was like, I was thinking maybe like a pallet, maybe. And he just started laughing. And he said, absolutely. How much do you need? And so we were able to obtain that. We have taken it down. We started a nutritional program. My daughter helped us to write the protocol and set it up. And so we have our medical teams that go in and they usually start in January and they run through July. So they go in and they monitor all the children for us by doing the mid upper arm circumference readings and their height and their weight. And we're able to determine how nutritionally deficient they are or if they're not deficient at all. Last year, there was only probably 10 children we saw probably close to 2,000 kids last year
Wow.
that did not need any kind of supplement.
Man.
And so we just are really kicking this program off. We're hoping and praying for a community health worker that can come in and help us to run the program there, either a Dominican or American that can speak Spanish, so
Mhm.
that we can go into more of the communities because there's 21 baptized in this area. So there's a lot of territory to cover from the clinic wise, and they would work hand in hand with Dr. Glory and help us to get this program off the ground.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's so awesome. Yeah. And, being able to go there and see it, I think like for me, it was really huge. This was like my first international
Yeah.
mission trip. And, you hear about it, you see the photos, but like to be there in a team of all white folks, I'm the only chocolate person. But in the country, I am the
They're all
majority.
chocolate
Yeah, they're
people.
all chocolate.
Yes.
And I,
Yes.
for me, it was like, I forgot about this.
Yeah.
Like I
Yeah.
didn't even realize like and we're all God's people, but it goes a little deeper. Like these are my people, like
Yes.
they look like me. And what I loved was when we got to serve in the boys' home and go and do some painting and things. There was this one young man, Roberto, and
Yeah.
how there are certain things that are just culturally across, like no matter where you are, you look like
That's
me. There are
exactly
just some
right.
cultural things that we just do.
Yeah.
And there was something that was said. A student did something just silly, just something goofy, and he and I look at each other, and I was like, and he looks at me, and kind of gives the same
Yeah.
look, and we just both laugh.
Yeah.
And his English is good, but it's not like ours. But it was like even in the broken like language barriers, there was still just this cultural thing that we understood, and to be able to communicate that, and I
Well, and
think yeah, go ahead.
I think you experience that as well in the church services because the church
Yes.
services there are so different than what we experience
Right.
here. But the love of Christ and the worship of the Savior is there.
Mhm. Yeah.
And it's so funny that you mentioned the difference because when my boys moved in with us, we came home one year at Christmas, and they sent me this picture, and they said, "Mom, if you can find this," they didn't want to come with us, but they wanted
Mhm.
some stuff from the States, and so they were like, "Mom, if you can find this for us, we'd love to have one."
Right.
So I went to one of my friends who's black. I said to her, I said, because the first year we brought Freddie home, I had to find a black barber in Waynesboro because he needed a haircut. And anyway, so I asked her and I said, I was like, look at this. Is this like goes on your earphones or something like that? She busted out laughing. She's like, Donna, that's one of like the sponge brushes that they use to
Yes.
curl their hair. But my God, my children were so into all of this
Yeah.
new iPhone and we didn't have the AirPods back then,
Right.
so it just looked like a little, and
Yeah.
she just busted out laughing. She's like, "Honey, I got to teach you some things," and I was
Yeah.
like, "Yeah," but it's so true. But I think that love covers a multitude of that if we just
Mhm.
learn to love each other and
Right.
accept each other's differences. We're all different in
Right.
ways, but the love of Jesus Christ unifies us if we
Right.
will allow it to.
Yeah. Yeah. So, could you unpack a little bit more of like how your love of God and love of neighbor, has kept you going? Because I mean, you've been doing ministry there for, 25 years or so.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, I actually this year coming up will be 27. I can't.
right. Yeah.
It is. Albert, I tell people this all the time that as a church family and as a community,
Mm,
that you really become, if you put your feet to your faith and
mhm.
get out and deny yourself, take up your cross and follow Jesus, no matter where he sends you, your life will have meaning and purpose because he chooses all of us to mission work. He chose
Yeah.
all of us to do his mission. When he left here, he said, go ye therefore into all the world, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son, making disciples. He gave us that commission to go. And if you will allow him to take your passion or your desires, scripture says the desires of your heart, that God will give you the desires of your heart. Well, sometimes those are desires he develops in you. And so this,
Right.
I believe, was something that was developed in me as a small child, but
Right.
it did not come to fruition until my 30s.
Mhm.
Um, but I know how my faith has grown exponentially, learning I've had to lean on the Lord and trust him and be faithful to the calling and be faithful to the service, even in very, very difficult times when I didn't like to. But he was growing me during that process. And those
Right.
12 years that we were trying to get on the field and the doors just didn't open up, I mean, I agonized it, which just was almost ready to give up. And a pastor said to me, if God never answers your prayer, will you still follow him?
Right.
And that was like a gut punch for me. And I had to realize that no matter where God puts me, I have to serve and I'm called to serve.
Right.
But it really does bring such peace and such joy. Even, I mean, down there, it's hot as can be. I
Oh
mean, it
yeah.
truly is. There are mosquitoes everywhere. The food
Mhm.
is different from the culture is different from what we are. There's sewage running in the streets. I mean, it's not an easy life,
Right.
but it's a joyful life when you give it to the Lord and let him work.
Yeah. So, for somebody watching this and maybe they're, wrestling with calling, right, and purpose,
Mhm.
what would you say to that person as they're wrestling with this? Because it might not be missions, so to speak. It might not be vocational ministry like myself either, but maybe they just feel this great need to do something for the glory of God, right? And like, what would you say to that person as they are wrestling with that?
Stay on your knees, pray to the Lord and ask him to show you what your purpose is and where he wants you to be. And
Mhm.
then be pliable, let him mold and shape you just like clay in the potter's hands. Let him mold you and shape you into who he's called you to be. Stay in the word. Find somebody that you feel like you has a similar calling that you do, that you can
Mhm.
sit down with. Everybody's calling's different, but
Mhm.
there are things that you can glean from somebody else's walk as well.
Right.
Find a good Christian person that can mentor you, that can love you, that can pray for you, that can pray that God will show you that purpose and reveal it to you. And he will. Listen, he's not going to waste somebody that wants to work for him
Right.
because scripture says the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Pray then, therefore, to the Lord of the harvest that he'll send out workers. He's ready to send out workers. He's just got to have a willing and obedient and perseverant worker to go for him.
Right. Right.
And it may not be that your calling is overseas. My calling was here. Your
Mhm.
calling is to the kids at Georgia Southern. But we all have a calling. We all have a place where we can serve the Lord. We can share the gospel, and we can be that. What I was telling my women's Bible study the other day, we can be the Bible that somebody I think I heard a man say one time, you might be the only Bible that somebody reads. And
Yeah.
that's so true. Your life witnesses and testifies even when you don't realize
Right.
it does.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I tell students that all the time. It's like if somebody can read your life and see Jesus right through that on every single page and every single chapter,
Right.
right?
Right.
Even in the midst of my failures, right? And I think it's having that humility of saying I'm still going to mess up, I'm still going to fail, but
Right.
if I continue to
Right.
be obedient and strive towards Him, He can do something with that as well. So yeah, that's a good
And
word.
I say to be on your knees and stay in the word because the devil's going to do everything he can
Yeah.
to dissuade you from doing what the Lord's called you to do. And he's
Hmm.
going to throw up every roadblock he possibly can. But
Yeah.
when you truly give in and you truly decide this is what you're going to do and you know it's a true calling from God, when the time is right, hell can't close those doors. They're going
Yeah.
to swing wide open and
Right.
everything will fall into place, even down to the minute things that you never ever thought that God could, that like he could answer or he could satisfy, he does.
Yeah. No, that's so good. Yeah. I think that's so important for people to realize that. Like, even I tell students and I tell friends, like you're praying, but there's two people listening, right?
That's exactly right.
So you might want to make sure that you lean into the one that's speaking truth and not the
That's
lie.
right. And speak truth. Yes. And I will tell you this, God is not an author of confusion. He is an author of peace. So
Hmm.
if there's confusion around it, it's not right.
Yeah.
If there's peace there, it's right.
Right.
Even in the midst of confusion, there can still be peace. So you follow what God is about, and He is about bringing peace.
Right. Yeah. That's so good. Well, to kind of, wrap us up, how can someone get more involved? How can they support you? How can they learn more? What are some ways for people to do that?
So we have a website at bighopeministries.org. You can follow us there. You can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram. We're Big Hope
Mm,
Ministries. We would love for you to join us as a team if you're interested or you'd like to go. We have a way that you can fill out a form online and we can get back to you and try to plug you in where we feel like you could best fit. And we would love to have you join us. That's a
yeah.
great opportunity. Only a 3-hour flight from the United States. That's the
Yeah.
nice part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is crazy. It
And
is
it's
so.
very affordable.
Yeah. Yeah. To go to the Dominican Republic, a lot of folks go on vacation, but it is actually very doable for sure.
Yeah, very.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'd love to have you.
Yeah, yeah, and you should go because I've been, and it's great.
Yeah.
Like we
Yes.
students are like, "Are we going back?" I'm like, "Yes, but also
Yes.
we got some other things we got to figure out too."
That's
But
right.
but
That's
we
right.
we definitely look forward to continue the ministry, and
Yes.
and
And
you
thank you
already
for
know.
having me.
Yeah, I was about to say, and you already know in any way that I can help,
That's
that's what I'm
right.
here for, and
And I do appreciate it very much. We can't
yeah.
wait to have the Georgia Southern group go with us again.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the one thing I always offer to the guests, are there any questions you have for me as we wrap up as well?
I just want to know how you're doing as far as the ministry at Georgia Southern, because I know
Yeah.
that's your art and that's your passion, and you were so good with all those kids, and I know they are just loving you and enjoying it, and I pray you're doing well.
Yeah, yeah, doing well, doing well. The thing is, working with college students, there is always the big D word called drama, or
Oh
there is
yeah,
always, just stuff, right? Just
yeah,
stuff. And I think in the midst of that, something I'm always reminded of is that for me, I am X amount of years into adulthood now. The older I
right.
get, the more they're still the same age,
Oh
because
yeah,
they're always freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, freshman,
yeah,
sophomore, junior, senior. They're
yeah.
always going to be in that age range. So, I try not to get so frustrated with 18 to 22-year olds, right? Because
Right.
I remember what it was like to be 18 to 22. And there's always
Yeah,
going to be drama. There's always going to be strife. There's always going to be somebody, he said, she said.
yeah,
And I think in the midst of that, I've always, and I've definitely this semester really tried to look for the wins or look for where God is working.
yeah.
Or even if I can't see it, lean into just being present in the moment and see where
Absolutely.
that gets me.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's like, your husband, John and Rich, bumps into that one young lady at Starbucks, right?
I
And
know, isn't it crazy?
yeah. It's crazy, and she and I have talked a couple of times, and I've tried to invite her and all the things. So if you see this, you know who you are,
Yeah.
and know that you're loved. But it's just being available, right,
Yeah.
and just sitting in it. And I don't care if I get a student as a freshman or if I get them as a second semester senior. I just try
Right.
to love on students and really just try to be there in it. And it's always so good where, at some point in time, students basically like, all right, Albert's dad and Kat is mom, my wife.
Yeah.
And we really, I remember at first Kat was like, I'm not mom. And then now she goes, how's the kids? Are they doing okay?
Yeah.
She hadn't seen them in a
Yeah.
couple of weeks. She was like, how are the kids? They doing okay? How are they doing? And we honor that they're adults for sure, but we
Yeah.
also go, mom and dad aren't here, and
Yeah.
how we can, we will step in and just help and just be present. We don't have
Right.
all the answers, but in the places and spaces in which we do, we try to offer that. And this
Well,
this
God
semester was
bless you,
definitely there.
Albert, for what you're
Yeah.
doing.
So I hope you enjoyed that. That was the episode with Donna Bearden with Big Hope Ministries. And I hope you found some value in this and what it looks like to be in mission and ministry. And yeah, I think it's a really big opportunity, like things that she does and what their ministry does and their organization and how they, really try to show up and really serve in the places and spaces where they find themselves. So ultimately, I hope that you enjoy it. If you want to know more about them, check them out, bighopebeardenministries.com. And I'm so glad that I could, give the space and be here and ultimately have this opportunity to share with you guys all that they do. So, with that being said, I appreciate you and we'll see you next time. Be good, y'all. Peace, love, and hair grease.